You think you miss them, but you don't. What you actually miss is the version of yourself that came alive in their presence, the one that felt wanted, seen, and important. It's not about them. It never was. That whole obsession, that deep ache in your chest, the late night urge to check if they're watching your stories or thinking about you, it's not really about the person. It's about the identity you wrapped yourself in when you were around them. And now that they're gone, you feel like something is missing. But the truth is, what's missing is not them, what's missing is you. The real you, the powerful you, the version of you that you believed existed only in connection to them. But here's the part no one tells you. You don't need them to feel that way again. You don't need anyone to wake up that part of you. You can become that version of yourself again, stronger, wiser, grounded, not because someone else sees you, but because you finally see yourself. When someone leaves or things change, it's easy to believe you miss them, that they were the source of your happiness, your peace, your sense of being wanted. But if you slow down and look deeper, you'll realize what actually hurts isn't their absence. It's the version of you that you became when they were around. You felt seen, chosen, important. And because you felt that way in their presence, your mind linked it all to them. It felt like they were the source, but they weren't. That's one of the biggest illusions, thinking someone else is the reason you felt loved or alive. In truth, those feelings came from you. You allowed yourself to feel that way because your mind had a reason to open up. You gave yourself permission to shine, to soften, to feel worthy. And when they left, you didn't just lose the connection, you lost the self-image you built in that connection. What you're really missing isn't them. It's you, the version of yourself that felt alive when they were watching. And most people don't realize that. They think they're addicted to someone. But what they're craving is their own reflection through that person's eyes. They're chasing the feeling of being enough, being chosen, being special. That's what makes the pain so deep. It's not just about love, it's about identity. Maybe that version of you felt confident, light, hopeful, or maybe it wasn't perfect, but at least you felt something you hadn't felt in a while. When that ends, it's not just the person that disappears. It's the version of you that only seemed to exist when they were around. That's what hurts. That's why healing feels so confusing. Because it's not just a breakup, it's a disconnection from self. But here's the truth, that version of you didn't come from them. It came from you. You were always the source. They didn't give you those feelings. You accessed them within yourself when you felt seen. And the moment you realize that, you stop waiting, hoping, and chasing. You start reclaiming. You start remembering. Because the version of you that felt magnetic, alive, and worthy never left. You just forgot how to access it without needing someone else to reflect it back to you. You're not really missing them. You're missing who you believed you were when they were there. And the best part, that version of you still belongs to you, not to anyone else. What keeps people stuck long after something ends isn't always love, it's emotional addiction. Not to the person, but to a version of themselves they believed they could only access in that situation. It becomes a cycle where the mind keeps replaying moments, conversations, even eye contact, not because they can't let go of someone else, but because they can't let go of who they thought they were in that reality. That version felt like a breakthrough, like a breath of fresh air after a long time of feeling overlooked or unworthy. And when something finally made them feel special or alive, they clung to it, not just emotionally, but chemically. The brain doesn't just process emotions, it memorizes them. So when a powerful emotional state is tied to a person or moment, the body starts to crave it the same way it would crave a drug. That feeling of being wanted or noticed becomes a high. And when it's gone, the mind doesn't just grieve, it panics. It starts reaching for ways to get the hit again. That's why thoughts circle back. Why hope keeps showing up uninvited, and why silence feels unbearable. It's not just heartbreak, it's withdrawal from the emotional identity that became familiar. But here's the truth that begins to set you free. That identity wasn't real. It was a momentary version of you, filtered through the need to be seen. It wasn't rooted in stability. It was built on conditions. It was the kind of self that only felt worthy when reflected in someone else's eyes. And that's why it never felt fully safe, because deep down, it was never truly yours. It depended on being chosen, being validated, being remembered. So even though it felt good, it was fragile. And now that it's gone, you're being invited into something deeper, something real. The emotional addiction isn't your fault. It happens when you've been disconnected from your true self for so long that even a glimpse of feeling enough feels like a lifeline. But now it's time to see that you don't need to chase a reflection anymore. You don't need to keep trying to recreate moments that were never meant to last forever. What you're really craving is safety within yourself, a version of you that doesn't depend on being needed or chosen to feel whole. And the moment you stop running from the silence, you start to hear something different. You hear the voice underneath the fear, the one that isn't addicted, the one that doesn't beg, the one that knows its own value even without being seen. That voice is yours. It always was. The false self was just a costume, one that fit during a time of need, but no longer serves who you're becoming. There's a part of you that doesn't want to move on. Not because you're weak, and not because you don't know better, but because the ego is afraid of what's on the other side of letting go. It's not just clinging to memories, it's clinging to identity. It's trying to protect you from the unknown by keeping you wrapped in a version of yourself that felt more certain, even if that certainty came from pain. The ego doesn't like change. It doesn't want to evolve. It wants to keep you tied to the familiar, because it believes survival is safer than transformation. When something ends and the identity you formed around it begins to collapse, the ego rushes in to glue it back together. That's why you start hearing thoughts like, what if it was my fault? Or what if I just fixed this one thing? These thoughts aren't coming from truth, they're coming from fear. The ego believes if it can just recreate the old reality, it can avoid the discomfort of stepping into the unknown. It's not trying to hurt you, it's trying to keep you safe. But in doing so, it ends up keeping you small. You're not crazy for thinking about the past so much. You're not broken for having moments where you'd go back if you could. That's just the ego trying to go backward into something it can define, something it can label, something that made sense, even if it hurt. Because at least the pain was familiar. At least you knew how to be that version of yourself. But healing isn't about staying in the familiar. Healing is about releasing the need to be who you were and making space for who you really are underneath it all. The ego will fight hard to keep the old story alive. It'll use memories as evidence. It'll stir up nostalgia. It'll make you question your progress. But just because it's loud doesn't mean it's right. The soul whispers. It doesn't beg. And when you get quiet enough, you'll feel the difference between fear holding on and truth letting go. You don't have to hate the past to move on from it. You don't have to erase every memory or pretend you never cared. But you do have to be willing to separate your worth from what no longer exists. You have to be honest about whether you're still trying to protect a version of yourself that was only alive in that old story. And if you are, it's okay. Awareness is the beginning of release. The ego doesn't want to die, but the truth is, it doesn't have to. It just has to evolve. It has to stop believing that your value depends on anything outside of you. And the more you let it soften, the more space you create for your real self, the one that never needed a role to be worthy of love. When you realize you're not missing a person but a feeling, a version of yourself that felt alive, the next step is learning how to return to that self without needing anyone else to make it real. This is where so many get stuck because they think that sense of worth in life can only come from outside approval. But the truth is that part of you was never outside to begin with. It was always inside, waiting patiently for you to come back. Returning to your true self means learning to feel seen and accepted by yourself first. It means recognizing that your value is not tied to how others treat you, but how you treat yourself. When you become your own witness, when you allow yourself to be noticed and valued by your own attention, the power shifts. It's like turning on a light inside a dark room. The room was always there, but the light changes everything. This doesn't happen overnight. And it's not about forcing yourself to feel better. It's about letting yourself feel everything honestly, without judgment, without trying to fix it. You might find it uncomfortable at first to sit with your own attention because it can feel unfamiliar. But as you practice, the discomfort fades, and you start to notice the layers beneath the pain, the parts of you that were hidden, waiting to be discovered. You start to understand that feeling whole and worthy is not about achieving something or proving your value to someone else. It's about being present with who you are right now, fully and without apology. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you might have given away or lost in the search for love, approval, or connection. And as you do, you build a foundation that no one can take away. The real power of returning to your true self is that it breaks the cycle of addiction to the past. When you don't need someone else to reflect your worth back to you, you stop chasing and waiting. You stop hoping that a text, a call, or a reunion will finally fix the emptiness inside, because you've already found what you were looking for, inside your own heart and mind. This is the place where freedom begins. It's the place where you realize you don't have to lose yourself in anyone else's story to feel alive. You don't have to sacrifice your peace for connection. You don't have to shrink your light to be loved. You can be whole and still open, vulnerable and still strong, loved and still your own foundation. And the more you come back to this, the less you'll feel the need to hold on to what no longer serves you. The past will lose its power over your emotions, and your identity will no longer depend on memories or people. Instead, you'll stand steady in your own truth, a truth that is unshakable because it's rooted in who you really are. Once you start returning to your true self, the next step is learning how to nurture that self every day. This means developing habits and ways of thinking that support your new foundation, so it grows stronger and steadier instead of fragile and shaky. It's about creating a relationship with yourself that's loving, patient, and consistent, the kind of relationship that wasn't there before or was maybe clouded by old patterns of seeking approval outside. Nurturing your true self doesn't require anything dramatic. It begins with small acts of kindness toward yourself, moments where you choose to speak gently instead of harshly, moments where you allow yourself to rest instead of pushing harder, moments where you acknowledge your own needs without guilt. These aren't selfish acts, they are essential acts of healing that rebuild trust inside you. This process also means learning how to listen to yourself. You might have spent so long trying to tune out your own feelings or opinions because you were too focused on someone else's approval. But now, turning inward and paying attention to what you truly want, what makes you feel calm or excited, becomes a powerful tool. It's like tuning into your own radio frequency, finding the channel where your authentic self broadcasts clearly, without static. Building this inner connection also means practicing patience with yourself. Healing isn't linear, and it's normal to feel pulled back into old stories or emotions sometimes. But instead of judging yourself for these moments, you start to see them as part of the process. Each time you catch yourself, you gently bring your attention back to the present, reminding yourself that your worth isn't tied to the past or to anyone else's actions. Another important part of nurturing your true self is setting boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls, they are gates you control. They let in what serves your growth and keep out what drains your energy or pulls you back into old cycles. When you protect your emotional space, you give yourself the freedom to thrive, to experiment with new ways of being, and to develop confidence in your own presence. As you build this relationship with yourself, you'll start noticing subtle shifts. You'll realize you don't feel as desperate for connection because your internal connection is strong. You'll catch yourself choosing peace over chaos more often. And when relationships come into your life, they will feel different, not like a need to complete you, but like an invitation to share your already full cup. This nurturing process is what turns insight into transformation. It's what makes the new self not just a momentary feeling but a stable reality. And it's what helps you finally break free from the addiction to someone else's reflection, because you've become your own source of love, approval, and safety. When you fully step into your true self, everything about how you experience love and connection shifts in ways you might never have imagined possible. This isn't just about healing from the past or moving on from someone. It's about transforming the very foundation of your being. Suddenly, the way you see yourself changes, and with that, the way you allow others to show up in your life changes too. The moment you stop depending on external validation to feel worthy, you begin to radiate a quiet confidence that is magnetic without trying. It's not loud or desperate, it's calm and steady. This kind of energy naturally attracts relationships and connections that reflect your true value because you're no longer projecting need or fear. Instead, you're projecting peace and wholeness. You start to realize that love is not a transaction where you have to prove yourself or chase after it. Love becomes a natural flow, something that arrives when you are fully present with yourself. You no longer tolerate relationships that demand you shrink or hide parts of yourself just to be accepted. Instead, you create space for connections that honor who you are in your entirety. This shift doesn't just impact romantic relationships, it affects every connection in your life. Friendships become more genuine because you're not afraid to be vulnerable. Family relationships change because you bring your authentic self instead of a mask. Even your relationship with work or creativity improves because you're no longer running on the fuel of external approval, but on your own inner fire. Stepping into your true self is not a one-time event, it's an ongoing practice. There will still be moments of doubt and fear, but now you have the tools to bring yourself back to center. You've built a relationship with yourself that's stronger than any external circumstance. You know how to be your own safe place. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you love and accept yourself fully, the easier it becomes to let go of what no longer serves you. You realize that clinging to past versions or people only limits your growth. Freedom is not about forgetting. It's about reclaiming your power to choose who you become next. So, the addiction wasn't really to them at all. It was to a feeling of being seen, valued, and alive that you thought came from outside. But that feeling was always inside, waiting for you to remember it. Now, it's your turn to step into that truth, to become the source of your own worth and connection. And when you do, you won't just attract better relationships, you'll attract a better life, one that reflects the fullness of who you truly are. Thanks for staying with me through this journey. Remember, what you're truly craving isn't someone else. It's the part of you that feels alive and worthy all on its own. If this message hit home, drop a comment sharing one small way you're reconnecting with your true self today. I'm curious to see how you're stepping into your own power. I will meet you with another golden nugget. Happy manifesting.